I believe one of the phrases as we were just getting connected here from my friend Amy Allenson Dundon was she was peeking over at the production room next to her and said, we're just taking a look in the fishbowl. That's kind of a thing that we do here on the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It is brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation, as always, joined by the wonderful Amy Allenson Dundon. Amy, how are we, my friend? Are things well?
Things are well, Crockett. Summer's moving right along, and life seems to be happening in spite of wanting to slow down. But things are good. Glad to be here with you. How are you?
I am excellent. Yes, the days feel long and the time moves quick. So I don't know how that all works, but that's kind of how it's going this summer for sure. It feels like it's been a long time, but really not that long since our last guest joined us for an episode. Jason Fry is a licensed clinical social worker joining us once again. Jason, you don't write, you don't call, we worry. How are things, my friend?
Things are going well. Like I said, when I don't call, everything is good.
Okay. No news is good news kind of episode.
You don't want to hear from me sometimes.
Excellent, my friend. Well, we appreciate you joining us once again. You were excellent last time. Looking forward to another great conversation today. So we're going to be talking a little bit about how to overcome the fear of asking for help, which for some people I feel like might not feel like a big hurdle to get over, but for others, I mean, it could probably be a crippling situation for some folks. So Jason, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Why do so many people struggle to ask for help, even in a situation where they feel like they genuinely need it?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with stigma of asking help. Media portrays it as a weakness. There's so many things on TV and in books where the hero has to do everything by themselves. And we get inundated with that. So everybody thinks, well, if I ask for help, then it means that I'm weak and I'm not the hero. So I need to be able to do it myself. And I think that's really the big thing of why people just struggle with asking for help.
Amy, I'm going to come to you on that one because he said a weakness. It's perceived as a weakness, perhaps a stigma around that. Do you feel like that's the most common reason why people aren't going to go ahead and reach out for support in these scenarios?
I think that has a lot to do with it. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about, here we go again, AI and social media and the availability of information. So I think especially folks, our population in that like 5 to 20-year-old category, they've grown up with information right at their fingertips. So they don't have to ask for help. They can just Google it, or they can AI it now, right? I can put it in ChatGPT and find my answer. So asking for help is also very foreign to some of our younger friends because it's not something that they ever had to learn how to do. It falls into, and this was the conversation yesterday, it was just the art of critical thinking. And that also, it does tie into asking for help and saying, I don't understand this, or I'm not understanding even how I'm feeling. Forget whatever task I'm trying to do. And part of it is, I shouldn't need to ask for help because I can go to AI, I can chat GPT it, and it'll be right there.
Well, yeah, that's true. And you have YouTube videos for everything. I remember buying a house and we had so many problems with it. And instead of hiring someone to come in and do it professionally, we looked online at videos and did it ourselves. Right. And we regret some of that now.
Plumbing, you might want to ask for help.
Yes.
Plumbing and electricity. Don't do them yourself.
Yeah. Well, I guess that kind of helps me in a way pivot. First of all, I'm sorry for the inconvenience that you had to face there with that, but it helped me pivot into this next question here because I think there is a level of, for folks that feels like, I'll use the phrase here is healthy independence, feeling like there are times when I feel like I can overcome. To your point, Jason, you mentioned be the hero in this scenario, take it on by myself and do all those things. But there is a difference between healthy and unhealthy circumstances and healthy and unhealthy mindsets. Can we just talk a little bit about the line there? Because it can be a bit of a shade of gray about when we go from, I can handle this on my own, I can do it, to maybe, I think I need to talk to somebody and get some help.
I think the line for me, thinking about it, it comes almost to an avoidance. If I ask for help, it's going to cost me time. It's going to cost me money. There's the fear of the unknown. So I'm avoiding those things. So by doing it myself, I don't have to look at somebody else to say, well, no, you're doing it wrong, or, to criticize the way I was doing it. So you're avoiding some of the bad feelings that you might have. I think a healthy relationship, or a healthy way of looking at asking for help is, I can't do this on my own, and it has nothing to do with me as a person or me as being a failure. It just means this isn't something that I'm great at.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think for folks that were fortunate enough to grow up in a very healthy environment, that's kind of a no-brainer. That's easy to do, is asking for help. But sometimes in certain households or environments, from the time kids are developmentally figuring out who they are and what they're capable of, they're shamed for asking for help.
Yeah.
So they grow up kind of learning, well, if I ask for help, then I'm told, really negative, derogatory things about that. So I've learned to just shut it off and figure it out on my own. So you're right. And I think that there's so many things that come into play. If I think about teaching a toddler to tie their shoes, they're going to ask for help, but I'm going to teach them how to tie their shoes and let them practice and practice and practice till they can do it themselves. There's a difference between like asking for somebody to show me how to do it and just continually asking for somebody else to do stuff for me, right? So I think that there's a line there too, where we have to be open to maybe not say, hey, can you do this for me? Can you show me how to do this, right? And that opens up the whole, well, if I have to ask you to show me how to do it, then somehow it makes me fallible or not perfect. And people don't want to be seen that way, to your point.
Yes. And I think your point about AI, that's where that comes in. AI doesn't show you how to do it. It just gives you the answer. So people get that immediate satisfaction of, okay, now I do know how to do it, even if it doesn't go the way that they want it to.
True, although AI doesn't always give you the right answer.
Correct.
So that's
Absolutely.
where that's the tricky piece, right? Is, listen, AI is here whether we want it or not, and I can ask questions to it, but I also can't take it as gospel. I would rather go to a licensed plumber to figure out how to replace my pipes than ask an AI that it's going to give me answers that somehow make a company profit on the back end.
Yeah.
That kind of paid the AI program to give me that information. So you have to be so careful about the line between who you ask for help, how you ask for help, and what that person's motive is to give you help.
Yes. And what your motive is to get that help, whether it's, I just don't want to do this, or I really need to figure out for myself how to do this.
Yeah.
I think there's almost like a laziness factor to it sometimes, where I'm going to ask for help because I don't want to do it. I just want somebody to do it for me. And that's that, again, living in that digital age where you're just going to get everything that you want at the snap of your fingers.
Yeah, which is scary.
Yeah.
Well, it comes back to the give someone a fish, they eat for a day, teach them to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime. And so I am curious, though, as someone who maybe is in the situation of someone noticing signs perhaps in someone. Jason, I'll start with you on this one. Approaching it to someone as if maybe they would see it as a sign of, maybe it's your sibling. Maybe it's somebody that grew up in a similar environment to you that might perceive the idea of help as weakness. How can I approach someone and kind of give them the idea that it's the opposite of that? It's courageous to be willing to be vulnerable with yourself and say that I'm at a point where I feel like I need to accept help beyond what I can do for myself. It's a person in a situation that's a loved one, a friend, a colleague, anyone that's kind of a peer in your life, to be like, hey, I don't think what you're doing shows a sign of weakness. I think what you would be doing is showing a sign of courage.
I think it comes down to, what is the goal? What are you looking for an outcome? You want something fixed. Do you want it fixed right, or do you want it fixed now? And if you want it fixed now, you might need to have it fixed again in 3 months if it's not done right the first time. So I usually look at outcomes and I look at motivation. What are you looking to do? If you want this done, you should have it done the best way possible. And sometimes you're not going to be able to do that yourself.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And I think it goes the same way for, counseling or therapy. Just back to the AI example, I can go to a chat bot, whatever they're called. You know how technical I am, Crockett. But I can find something online and say, what do I do about my depression? And it might give me an immediate answer, but it's not therapy. And it's not going to take you down the path that's going to heal you. It's going to give you an immediate answer right now that may or may not be valid and right and clinically ethical. You can get it now. Or you can humble yourself. And some of this is about humility, right? You can humble yourself to say, I need someone to walk me through this who is clinically licensed as a therapist or psychologist or a plumber. I need somebody that I know it's going to take a little longer, but it's going to be done right and it's going to be done well. And that's humbling, especially, and we've talked about this in the past too, for our veterans, military, first responder community group. It can be more difficult for those heroes that take care of other people all day long to take the time, you know, to fix something. But it's why we have peer support programs. It's why we have, you know, coffee with veteran programs. It's why we want that connection, because part of how we help somebody ask for help is by modeling how we do it ourselves, right? If you're close with somebody, show them how you ask for help. Model that. Get that help. Let them watch you do that. Say, oh, well, you know, Jason reached out and asked for help, or Amy I watched them navigate that and it wasn't so bad. So we have to model it. We can't just preach it too.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we have programs where we have therapists that specifically help therapists. Because as a therapist, we think we know everything already, even though we don't, and we need that help too. So going to another therapist and it again, humbling, saying, hey, I need help and I know I should know how to do this, but I don't in this case. What can you tell me?
Well, that's why we do supervision.
Yeah.
That's why we do clinical supervision, even for clinicians that have been practicing for 20, 30, 40 years.
Absolutely.
We might need a therapists on therapists podcast to spin off of this one, Amy.
We could.
We'll have that talk behind the scenes. We'll see how that one goes. I want to talk a little bit about signs. I mentioned kind of the idea of noticing something in a peer, a loved one, whoever it might be, signs that perhaps they're carrying something a little heavy. Kind of a two-part question here, Amy. I'll start with you. So just maybe signs that someone is really hanging on to something. And, you know, again, I kind of come back to that idea of what is just for someone noticing in everyday stress. Man, it's been a tough week, you know? I'm kind of noticing the difference between what might actually be depression or anxiety or burnout versus someone's just going through a little bit of a stretch right now. I'm not overwhelmingly concerned, but now all of a sudden we've hit this point in time where it feels like we're going a little bit longer than I'm starting to see signs of a different person in this person. So just kind of maybe that's the question. Where does it go from as a peer from noticing, it's just been a rough couple of days to maybe, wow, I think this is something that really needs to be addressed?
It comes back for me again to using very direct, plain language, right? If I would want to say to Jason, wow, Jason, I notice that you've really been withdrawn this past week, and I'm worried that there's something on your mind. Is there anything I can help you with? Just like when a few episodes ago, we talked about how to talk about suicide. You know, that's a dramatic example, but we use direct, plain language and we ask the question. So I think if you're even thinking that somebody in your circle is struggling, it's important to say to them, I feel worried about you. I noticed that, you know, you didn't come out to dinner with us like you said you were going to on Friday night. And whatever we're noticing about that person, whether they're in your household, they're in your workspace, they're, you know, a kid you teach in school, I think it's important to just come out and say, hey, I'm noticing XYZ. And, you know, I'm wondering, it's kind of approaching it with curiosity. I wonder if you've noticed that you've withdrawn lately.
Yeah.
Right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Being curious.
Being curious. Yes, be curious. And that's the best way to do it, because then you're not making it seem like there's something really wrong with them, but that you're noticing that there's something going on.
Yeah, if we start that out of a curiosity from a standpoint of, hey, Crockett, I'm wondering if you've noticed that you've stepped back lately from the conversations or the texts that we used to have, and you feel a little bit distant. I'm wondering if you've noticed that. You know, it's much different than what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Curiosity and your approach could certainly play a big factor in how that conversation is going to go. I want to get into one of my favorite phrases is you can't fill up cups for other people if your cup is empty. And I feel like the idea of wanting to be there and help other people, again, if it's your significant other, if it's a brother or sister, if it's a loved one, a friend, whatever it might be, it feels like the obvious thing in these situations is to try to go to your friend and be helpful, try to be there for them, try to do that sort of thing. Jason, why do we possibly think that it's possible for us to be so arms wide open to help someone else, but maybe when it comes to our own internal scenarios, maybe we aren't so forthcoming in trying to be productive in getting over a hump that maybe is in front of us?
I think it comes down to vulnerability. It's much easier to help another person than it is to admit that you need help for yourself. Even when you know that you need help for yourself, it's just, for me specifically as a therapist, we're looked at as the expert, that we know what we're doing, so we should know how to help ourselves. And that's not always the case. And I know when I see a patient, the very first thing I tell them is, I'm not the expert. You are. You know how you think, how you feel. I'm going to ask you questions so that I can understand that. Asking for help just, it's a way of making yourself vulnerable. And I think just we're again taught not to be vulnerable, that there's something wrong with that in society, which doesn't make sense because everybody knows that you need help from other people at some point in your life.
Amy, I want to talk a little bit about maybe your own self-awareness. You're getting to the point where you're realizing that, okay, I've kind of hit a wall here that I can't seem to get around. And maybe, we keep coming back to that word vulnerable. Your ability to do that isn't maybe a strong suit. So how can somebody go about, what's a good first step? I think unfortunately we keep coming back to the AIs and the Googles and all of those things, and that people are going to kind of find, hopefully not exactly what they're looking for, because that's part of this conversation, which reminds me, we could have a whole other conversation, a spin-off podcast based on some of the conversation the two of you have been having on that. But just a good first step for somebody that has finally hit a point maybe of no return of being like, I need to figure something out here. I haven't always been good at this sort of thing. Where's just a good place to start?
Yeah. With somebody you trust. Maybe it's your primary care doc. Maybe you have a good relationship, or maybe you don't go to them a lot, so you don't really know them. Your family doc is always a great place to start because they can, rule out anything medical that might be going on that you haven't thought about.
Yeah.
Maybe some blood work. Maybe it's some sugar levels. Maybe I'm getting so tired in the afternoon. Maybe it's depression. Well, maybe you need some blood work done. Like we need to get our trusted medical professionals involved. If we're at the point where I'm like, you know what, I've been struggling on my own for way too long. I need a place to start. So that's always a good place. You can call a therapist. Right? There are private practice therapists. You can call the number on the back of your insurance card and say, can you send me a list of psychotherapists or psychologists who are in my network? And make some phone calls. You can call your local health network and say, I'd like to get into therapy, and they'll kind of direct you. If you're a kiddo, talk to a teacher, or maybe you are part of a church group and you trust them. I think it's just kind of saying, listen, I've been struggling way too long on my own. I need a little help. What can you do for me? And sometimes we try to shoulder that burden way too long on our own.
Yeah.
And it's harder to crawl out of a hole the deeper you get. And sometimes it's about saying to somebody, can you throw me a ladder so I can start to crawl out of this hole? I don't need you to pull me out of the hole, but I need you to throw me a ladder because I've been digging for too long, right? And you can do that with anybody you trust. It doesn't have to be, oh, well, I can't get in for therapy, for 8 weeks. So for 8 weeks, I'm going to struggle on my own. Go to your family doctor in the meantime. Talk to trusted friends. if you're struggling with substance use, go to an AA meeting. There are lots of things out there that can be your ladder to help. I in grad school, I did an extensive part of my training in drug and alcohol work. And, the phrase then, this is 25 years ago, was, the only way to get out of the hole is to stop digging. And I think that's very relevant to what we're talking about today in terms of asking for help. The only way for me to start to see the light or feel a little bit of that burden being lifted is for me to put the shovel down and say, maybe the answer is not just digging this trench by myself. Maybe it's asking somebody for a ladder. Because I haven't been out of this hole in a long time. It's gotten comfortable. It's gotten safe down here. Digging is comfortable, right?
Yeah, it's what you know.
Right. Yeah.
And I love the analogy of the ladder because you're reaching out, asking for help. They're giving you a ladder, but you're still able to do it on your own. You're just doing it maybe with some guidance or with some support from someone else. So it doesn't feel like, oh, I can't do this myself. I just need a tool that I might not have had. Because if you're in a hole and you have a ladder with you, then what's the point? Mm-hmm. So,
Jason, I want to come right back to you with this one. We keep. I don't know that there's a way to. I guess the question that I want to ask is, when it comes to vulnerability, it's really easy to say take a small step in vulnerability. For somebody that doesn't like to be vulnerable, there's no really small step. It feels like, I've come back to this idea of shade of gray. You're either, making yourself vulnerable in a situation or you're not. However, with that thought in mind, for somebody that maybe that isn't a big part of their toolbox, as we borrow a phrase that we use on this podcast a lot, their toolbox, small, manageable ways to maybe approach the idea of being vulnerable in a situation that does have you asking for help.
There's a couple things I can think of. One, I think the very first one would be just admitting when you make a mistake. I know that's probably, it sounds a lot harder than it is, but just being honest with people and saying, yeah, I made a mistake. I'm human. We've all made mistakes. And it's going to happen again because we're always going to continue making mistakes. But admitting it, I think, is the first step in asking for help. Also, I'm thinking of a lot of the times when you're in a meeting, somebody will ask you a question, and if you don't know the answer, you don't want to say you don't know. But I think you have to. That's part of it. Because otherwise, you're going to be like AI and possibly give wrong information, and that's not good either. That's going to make it look worse.
Yeah.
And I think another big part, accepting compliments. So many people have a hard time with accepting compliments. It's really easy to just say thank you. But I think that's part of help. When somebody sees that you did something well, they compliment you on it, you're accepting their feedback. And that's really what help is. It's feedback. So we need to be able to accept the good feedback as well as the criticism.
Amy, I kind of liked your reaction to that. That made you kind of perk your ears up a little bit. When he says that, what are you thinking?
So I'm thinking it is really helpful to hear positive feedback. Mm-hmm. And we don't do it enough. And my mind went to, how often do we ask other people for positive feedback?
Right.
We don't. So what an interesting concept to say, hey, I know what I've not been doing well. I know these are the 2 points I've been struggling with. What are you seeing as my strengths right now? Mm-hmm. Right? That's also, like you said, hard for people to ask. Yeah. Right? But it is helpful, to hear the good too, because that will help me. Yeah, I am good at that. Other people do see that as a strength that I have. I'm going to build on that. Right? And other people, the areas that are not my forte, I'm going to hand them the ladder. I'm going to focus on the things that I'm really good at. And maybe I'm going to give something away that has me in that hole that I've been trying to figure out. But at the end of the day, I'm not a plumber.
Yeah.
Right? So if you tell me what I'm good at and I can really hear that, that's that in a way that is asking for help.
Yeah.
Help me understand where my strengths are is as important as help me, figure out math. We come back to my math deficiencies all the time. I don't do plumbing, I don't do math, but there are things I can do. And I think that's a great point, Jason, that we don't help each other out often enough by remembering to validate the good stuff.
Yeah. As you know, I like to write. And one of the vulnerabilities for me, one of the hardest things is asking people to look at a piece of my writing and tell me their honest feedback. But when I ask, I say what didn't work, but also tell me what did work. Because that way I know kind of what path I'm on, and I know where I need to kind of tighten some of the things up. So that's accepting compliments has to be part of it.
Yeah.
We've had conversations about leadership on this podcast before as well. And I think that's such an important position for whether you are the, matriarch, patriarch of your family, whether you are the captain of a team, whether you are, the teacher of a classroom, whatever it might be. Maybe that's a good thing to take away for you if perhaps you aren't the person who has this fear of asking for help, somebody who is maybe self-aware a little bit more, or doesn't have a fear of being vulnerable in this situation, is to, as we're talking about noticing signals from other people, if it is a position that you're in, is to give that compliment, to be the person that's reassuring, to give those things. As much as perhaps this podcast is about a person who's feeling a certain kind of way, you could also be the person that, puts a little bit of light in, as we say, digging the hole, puts a little bit of light in the hole as it's getting a little dark, as you're getting deeper and deeper. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really good spot to kind of wrap this one up with. Whatever situation that maybe you're in, and you don't even have to necessarily be, I mentioned the captain or the teacher or the leader or whatever it might be. If you're in the foxhole with somebody, trying to help them get through what they're doing and seeing the signs and giving some vulnerability yourself, saying positive things yourself, could certainly go a long way. And I think that's a really good spot to kind of wrap this one up. So to both of you, I appreciate you both. We've obviously got like 7 other podcast episodes. We've got a whole other podcast series and other episodes that we can do based off of this podcast. Get ready for the Therapist on Therapist podcast, brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation sometime soon. Amy, as always, thank you. Jason, a 2-timer now. We appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so you write. So can I, if you don't mind me asking, you write? Do we have anything published that people could read for themselves for you?
Yes, I have a whole collection of stories called Tales from the Calliope. Every story is based on a song, a different music genre. And it's all very dark fiction. So some of it gets very extreme horror. But my goal is to just make people feel something when they read what I write.
Okay, buddy, that's the whole point.
He's very humble. He's a very good horror, scary author. For
okay,
sure.
Jason, sounds like you need to learn to take a compliment a little
Yeah,
bit.
well, I do. I'm learning to get over my imposter syndrome.
No, you are excellent, my friend, and we certainly appreciate you and your insight today. So thank you.
Thank you.
It is the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It is brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation. You can get more information at stlukespennfoundation.org. For Amy Allenson Dundon, for Jason Fry, I'm Kevin Crockett. Thank you so much for joining us for the Just Start the Conversation podcast.